It was a crisp autumn evening in Philadelphia when Officer Richard Thompson pulled over a sleek black Mercedes on a quiet suburban street. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement as he approached the vehicle, his hand resting unnecessarily on his holster. Inside sat Anthony Richardson, a 32-year-old African-American man wearing a well-tailored suit, returning home from a charity event at the local children's hospital. Officer Thompson's demeanor was hostile from the start. He claimed Anthony had been speeding, though the professional boxer knew he'd been driving exactly at the limit, as he always did in this neighborhood. The officer's tone grew increasingly aggressive as he demanded Anthony's license and registration, speaking to him as if he couldn't possibly own such an expensive car legally. "Step out of the vehicle," Thompson barked, not even waiting for Anthony to finish retrieving his documents. Anthony remained calm, his years of training in the ring having taught him the importance of keeping cool under pressure. He complied slowly and deliberately, making sure his movements were clear and non-threatening. As Anthony stepped out, Officer Thompson's eyes widened slightly. At 6 feet 2 inches and 195 pounds of solid muscle, Anthony cut an imposing figure, but his gentle expression and respectful demeanor stood in stark contrast to the officer's confrontational attitude. Still, Thompson proceeded to question him aggressively about where he got the car and what he was doing in this nice neighborhood. "Sir," Anthony replied quietly, "I live 3 blocks from here. I'm returning from a charity event where I was the guest speaker. I'm a professional boxer, and I work with kids in the community." He reached for his phone slowly, intending to show the officer photos from the event. Thompson immediately reached for his weapon, shouting at Anthony to keep his hands where he could see them. The situation was escalating dangerously when another police car pulled up. The second officer stepped out, and his face lit up with recognition. "Wait, Thompson, stop," the new officer called out. "That's Anthony Richardson, the heavyweight contender. He's the one who runs the youth boxing program at the community center. My son trains there." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Officer Thompson's face flushed red as he realized his mistake. Not only was Anthony a legitimate resident of the upscale neighborhood, but he was also a respected community figure who had recently been featured in the local news for his work with at-risk youth. Anthony remained composed, though his heart was racing. He'd faced many opponents in the ring, but this kind of confrontation was different, more dangerous, more unpredictable. The second officer, Officer Chen, approached them both, his body language open and apologetic. "Mr. Richardson, I'm so sorry about this misunderstanding," Officer Chen said, shooting a disapproving look at his colleague. "My boy Tommy hasn't stopped talking about the anti-bullying seminar you gave at his school last month." Anthony nodded acknowledgement, maintaining his dignity despite the humiliation of being profiled. "It's important for kids to learn to stand up for themselves and others," he said quietly. "But it's equally important to learn when not to fight, when to keep your cool and handle things with respect." The message wasn't lost on Officer Thompson, who now stood awkwardly to the side, his earlier bravado completely deflated. The incident could have ended very differently if Anthony hadn't maintained his composure, or if Officer Chen hadn't arrived when he did. In the following days, the story spread through the community. The police department launched an internal investigation into Officer Thompson's conduct, and Anthony was asked to speak at the police academy about his experience. Rather than pursuing legal action, Anthony chose to turn the incident into an opportunity for positive change. He worked with the police department to develop a community outreach program, bringing officers into his boxing gym to train alongside neighborhood kids. The program helped break down barriers and build understanding between law enforcement and the community they served. The incident became a powerful teaching moment, not just for Officer Thompson, but for the entire department. Anthony's response, choosing education over retaliation, bridge building over division, demonstrated the kind of strength that couldn't be measured in boxing titles or weight classes. As Anthony later told his students at the community center, true power isn't about physically dominating others. It's about having the strength to remain calm in the face of injustice, and the wisdom to turn negative situations into opportunities for positive change. The story of that night spread far beyond Philadelphia, becoming a testament to how one person's dignity and restraint could transform a potentially tragic situation into a catalyst for community healing. Anthony's influence grew not because of his boxing titles, but because of how he handled himself outside the ring when faced with real-world prejudice. Through his actions, Anthony showed that the greatest victories don't always come with championship belts. Sometimes they come from choosing understanding over anger, and using one's platform to create meaningful change in the community. His story became a powerful reminder that true strength often lies not in how hard you can hit, but in how well you can keep your cool when facing injustice. The weeks following the incident brought unexpected challenges and opportunities. A bystander had recorded the entire encounter on their phone, and despite Anthony's initial reluctance, the video went viral on social media. Local news stations began calling, and civil rights organizations reached out offering support and legal representation. Anthony found himself at a crossroads. He could either let the incident fade away or use it as a catalyst for real change. After deep reflection and conversations with his family, he chose the latter. However, his approach surprised many people who expected him to pursue legal action or call for Officer Thompson's dismissal. Instead, Anthony scheduled a meeting with the police chief and proposed something unprecedented. He wanted to create a series of workshops where police officers and community members could come together in his gym, not just to train, but to really see and understand each other as human beings. The problem isn't just about police training, Anthony explained to the chief. It's about breaking down the walls of fear and mistrust on both sides. When you're in the ring with someone, sharing the same space, working toward the same goals, it becomes impossible to hold on to stereotypes. The police chief, initially skeptical, was moved by Anthony's vision. The department was facing increasing pressure from the community, and here was someone offering a constructive path forward. They agreed to launch a pilot program called Breaking Barriers Through Boxing. The program started small, just 6 officers and 12 community members, meeting twice a week at Anthony's gym. Officer Thompson, to everyone's surprise, volunteered to be part of the first group. His presence created tension initially, but Anthony's skilled facilitation helped transform that tension into productive dialogue. During these sessions, participants didn't just learn boxing techniques, they shared their stories, fears, and perspectives. Officer Thompson opened up about his own background, growing up in a tough neighborhood, losing his father to gang violence, and how those experiences had shaped his worldview and biases. The community members, in turn, shared their experiences of racial profiling, the anxiety they felt during traffic stops, and the impact this had on their daily lives. The conversations were sometimes uncomfortable, often emotional, but always honest. Local media caught wind of the program, and their coverage attracted attention from neighboring cities. Anthony started receiving calls from police departments and community organizations across the state, all interested in implementing similar programs. The transformation within the original group was remarkable. Officer Thompson, once the embodiment of racial profiling, became one of the program's most vocal advocates. He began speaking at police training sessions about his own journey of confronting and overcoming his biases. "I thought I was doing my job by being suspicious of everyone," he admitted during one session. "But what I was really doing was letting fear and prejudice guide my actions." Working with Anthony and getting to know the people in this community has completely changed my perspective. The program's success led to its expansion. Anthony's gym became a hub for community police relations, hosting events that brought together people from all walks of life. Youth participation increased dramatically, with many young people seeing Anthony as a role model not just for his boxing achievements, but for his leadership in bringing about positive change. One particularly meaningful moment came when Officer Thompson's daughter joined the youth boxing program. Seeing her train alongside the children of community members who had once felt targeted by police became a powerful symbol of the barriers being broken down. The local city council took notice and allocated funding to support the program's expansion. They saw it as a model for addressing systemic issues through grassroots community engagement. Anthony was invited to speak at city council meetings, where he emphasized the importance of creating spaces for genuine human connection. "When we strip away the uniforms, the titles, and the preconceptions," he would say, "we're all just people trying to make our community better. The key is finding common ground and building from there." As winter approached, Anthony organized a community showcase event where program participants could demonstrate their progress. The gym was packed with families, police officers, city officials, and media representatives. The energy was electric as officers and community members performed boxing demonstrations together, their earlier mistrust replaced by genuine camaraderie. During the showcase, a young boy approached Anthony with tears in his eyes. His father had been incarcerated due to a confrontation with police, and he'd grown up fearing law enforcement. But after participating in the youth program and seeing officers in a different light, he was beginning to imagine a different future for himself. This was the kind of impact Anthony had hoped for. Not just changing policies or procedures, but transforming hearts and minds, one person at a time. The incident that could have ended in tragedy had instead sparked a movement of understanding and reconciliation. As spring arrived, Anthony's story caught the attention of national media. A prominent news magazine wanted to feature him in their People Making a Difference series. Initially reluctant to step into the spotlight, Anthony agreed only after realizing how the exposure could help spread the program to other cities. The resulting article, titled "From Ring to Reconciliation: How a Boxing Champion is Changing Police-Community Relations," painted a vivid picture of the program's success. It featured interviews with participants, including Officer Thompson, and highlighted the measurable decrease in tension between police and residents in the neighborhoods surrounding Anthony's gym. However, not everyone supported the initiative. Some activist groups criticized Anthony for working with the police department, arguing that he was providing cover for systemic issues that required more radical solutions. Others within the police force felt the program was unnecessary and pushed back against its expansion. Anthony faced these challenges with the same composure he'd shown during the initial traffic stop. During a particularly heated community meeting, he stood before a divided audience and shared a perspective that resonated with both sides. "I understand the anger," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "I've felt it myself. But I also understand that change doesn't happen through anger alone. It happens when we're brave enough to step into uncomfortable spaces and do the hard work of building bridges." His words carried extra weight because people knew his story. He wasn't speaking from a place of privilege or detachment, he was speaking as someone who had experienced profiling firsthand and chosen to transform that experience into positive action. The program's success began attracting attention from police departments and community organizations in other cities. Anthony found himself traveling on weekends, helping other communities set up similar initiatives. He developed a training manual that combined boxing techniques with conflict resolution and bias awareness exercises. One particularly successful adaptation of the program emerged in a small town in the Midwest, where racial tensions had been running high following several controversial police incidents. The local police chief reached out to Anthony after seeing him interviewed on television. Within months of implementing the program, the town reported a significant improvement in police-community relations. Body camera footage showed officers handling potentially volatile situations with notably more patience and understanding. Community complaints against officers decreased by 40%. Back in Philadelphia, Anthony's original program continued to evolve. He introduced a mentorship component, pairing police officers with young people from the community. These partnerships extended beyond the gym, with officers attending school events and family gatherings, becoming genuine parts of the community they served. Officer Thompson's transformation became a powerful testament to the program's effectiveness. He was promoted to Community Relations Sergeant and began working closely with Anthony to train other officers. Their unlikely partnership, the officer who had profiled Anthony now working alongside him to combat profiling, became a symbol of the possibility for real change. The program also attracted support from unexpected quarters. A group of retired professional athletes, moved by Anthony's example, formed a foundation to help fund similar initiatives across the country. Their involvement brought additional resources and publicity, helping to establish programs in dozens of cities. However, Anthony never lost sight of the personal impact at the heart of the program. He maintained regular training sessions at his original gym, working directly with participants and ensuring the program stayed true to its core mission of building genuine human connections. One day, a young police recruit approached Anthony after a training session. She shared that she'd been ready to quit the force, disillusioned by the divide between police and the communities they served. The program had given her hope that things could be different, that she could be part of positive change. These individual stories of impact kept Anthony motivated, even as he dealt with the growing demands of the expanding program. He understood that real change happened not through grand gestures or sweeping policies, but through countless small moments of connection and understanding. As summer approached, Anthony received an unexpected letter from the governor's office. They wanted to recognize his work with a state humanitarian award. The ceremony would bring together police officials, community leaders, and program participants from across the state. But for Anthony, the real reward came during regular training sessions, seeing former adversaries becoming allies, watching barriers break down and understanding grow. He knew that while the program couldn't solve every problem or heal every wound, it was creating spaces where real dialogue and genuine change could take root. The success of the program brought new challenges that tested Anthony's resolve in ways he hadn't expected. His boxing career, once his primary focus, had taken a back seat to his community work. His manager and some close friends worried he was sacrificing his athletic prime for a cause that might be too big for one person to shoulder. "You're ranked number 2 in the world," his manager reminded him during a tense meeting. "The title shot we've been working towards for years, it's right there. But you've missed 3 training camps to set up programs in other cities." Anthony sat quietly in his office at the gym, photos of recent community events covering one wall, his boxing achievements on another. The decision weighing on him was more complex than choosing between boxing and community work. It was about identity, purpose, and the kind of legacy he wanted to leave. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Deshaun, a 15-year-old participant in the youth program. His father was in prison, and he'd initially come to the gym angry at the world, especially at police. Now he was one of their most dedicated young members. "Coach," Deshaun said, "there's something I want to show you." He pulled out his phone and played a video he'd recorded earlier that day. It showed him and Officer Rodriguez, one of the program's police participants, helping an elderly woman whose car had broken down. The interaction was natural, respectful, exactly the kind of change Anthony had hoped to see. That moment helped crystallize things for Anthony. While boxing had given him a platform, this work was giving him a purpose. He decided to postpone his title shot, a decision that made headlines in the sports world and drew both criticism and praise. The program continued to evolve in unexpected ways. A group of psychologists approached Anthony about studying the program's impact on implicit bias and community trust. Their preliminary findings were remarkable. Participants showed significant reductions in prejudicial attitudes and increased empathy for those from different backgrounds. The research caught the attention of police academies across the country. Anthony began receiving invitations to speak at training sessions, sharing not just his personal story but the concrete methods that had made the program successful. He emphasized that real change required more than just diversity training or community outreach. It needed sustained, meaningful interaction between police and community members. One particularly impactful development came when a police chief from Atlanta visited the program. She was struck by how the physical aspects of boxing training created opportunities for vulnerability and trust building that typical community policing programs missed. "When you're teaching someone proper stance, or how to throw a jab," Anthony explained to her, "you have to get close. You have to touch their shoulders, adjust their position. That physical contact, when done with respect and clear purpose, breaks down barriers in ways that sitting across a table never could." The chief implemented a modified version of the program in Atlanta, adapting it to address specific challenges in her community. Within 6 months, they reported a 30% decrease in use of force incidents and a significant improvement in community feedback. However, success brought scrutiny. A controversial police incident in another city led to media questions about whether programs like Anthony's were actually addressing systemic issues or just providing good publicity for police departments. Some critics argued that the resources spent on these programs would be better used for policy reform or oversight. Anthony addressed these concerns head-on during a national conference on police reform. "This program isn't a silver bullet," he acknowledged. "We need policy changes, accountability, and systemic reform. But we also need to create spaces where police and community members can see each other as human beings, where real relationships can form. These things aren't mutually exclusive, they're complementary." His words resonated with reform advocates and law enforcement alike. The conference led to a partnership with a major police reform organization, which helped develop metrics to measure the program's impact on both community relations and police behavior. As the program's first anniversary approached, Anthony organized a special event that brought together participants from different cities. The gathering included boxing demonstrations, panel discussions, and sharing of success stories. But the most powerful moment came during an unplanned exchange. A young officer who had been skeptical of the program initially stood up to share his story. With visible emotion, he described how the program had forced him to confront his own biases and change his approach to policing. "I thought I was one of the good ones," he admitted. "But this program showed me how much I still had to learn about truly serving my community." His honesty inspired others to share their stories, creating a powerful ripple effect of vulnerability and truth-telling. The event became a model for future gatherings, demonstrating how combining physical training with emotional openness could create lasting change. As the program entered its second year, Anthony faced an unexpected opportunity that would test his commitment in new ways. A major police department on the West Coast offered to fund a nationwide expansion of the program, complete with a substantial salary and resources that would allow Anthony to step away from boxing entirely. The offer came at a crucial time. His postponed title shot was now scheduled for the following month, and training had been increasingly difficult to balance with his community work. The decision would shape not just his future, but the future of the program he'd built. During a late-night training session, alone in his gym, Anthony found himself reflecting on his journey. The heavy bag swayed gently as he touched it, remembering the night of the traffic stop that had changed everything. He thought about Officer Thompson, now one of his closest allies, and the hundreds of lives that had been impacted by their unlikely partnership. The next morning, Anthony called a meeting with his core team, a diverse group that included police officers, community leaders, and program participants. He shared the West Coast offer and asked for their honest input. The discussion that followed revealed how deeply the program had transformed its participants. Officer Rodriguez, once known for his aggressive approach to policing, spoke about how the program had saved his marriage by helping him deal with work-related stress and anger. A teenage participant shared how her fear of police had transformed into a desire to become an officer herself, to be part of the change. The consensus was clear: the program needed to grow, but not at the cost of losing its heart. Anthony decided to take a middle path. He would accept the offer to expand the program, but with conditions. The expansion would be gradual, ensuring each new location maintained the personal connection that made the original program successful. Before implementing this new phase, Anthony had his title fight to focus on. The boxing world was buzzing with speculation about whether his community work had dulled his competitive edge. Some commentators suggested he was distracted, that his priorities had shifted too far from the sport. The night of the fight, the arena was packed with an unusual mix of fans. Police officers sat alongside community members from the program, all there to support the man who had brought them together. The atmosphere was electric as Anthony made his way to the ring. What followed was a masterclass in both boxing and life lessons. Anthony fought with a calm intensity that reflected his growth over the past 2 years. His opponent was younger, supposedly hungrier, but Anthony's experience and composure proved decisive. In the 10th round, with precision and power, Anthony secured his first world championship. In his post-fight interview, Anthony dedicated the victory to his program participants. "This title isn't just mine," he declared, his words reaching millions watching worldwide. "It belongs to everyone who's had the courage to step into our gym and face their prejudices, their fears, and their assumptions about others." The victory amplified Anthony's platform exponentially. Major news networks wanted to feature his story, not just as a boxing champion, but as a catalyst for social change. He used these opportunities strategically, always steering conversations back to the importance of genuine human connection in addressing societal divisions. The West Coast expansion began with a pilot program in Seattle. Anthony personally trained the first group of facilitators, emphasizing that the program's success depended on creating authentic relationships. "We're not here to check boxes," he told them. "We're here to change hearts and minds, one interaction at a time." Unexpected allies emerged during this period. A tech billionaire, moved by Anthony's vision, offered to create a free app that would help program participants stay connected and share their experiences. Police unions, initially skeptical, began endorsing the program after seeing its positive impact on officer wellness and job satisfaction. One particularly touching moment came when Officer Thompson's daughter graduated from the police academy. She had been inspired by her father's transformation through the program and wanted to become part of the next generation of officers working to bridge community divides. Research universities began conducting long-term studies on the program's impact. Early results showed significant improvements in various metrics: reduced use of force incidents, increased trust between police and communities, and better mental health outcomes for participating officers. But for Anthony, the most meaningful validation came in small moments: seeing a police officer and a teenager practicing boxing techniques together, watching former adversaries share meals and stories, hearing about conflicts diffused because people had learned to see each other as human beings first. As the program's national expansion gained momentum, Anthony encountered new challenges that tested the limits of his vision. The demand for new locations was overwhelming, with requests coming from cities across the country. Each community had its own unique dynamics and tensions that required careful consideration. During a planning session for a new location in Detroit, a local community leader raised a crucial question: how do we maintain the soul of this program while scaling it? It was a concern Anthony had wrestled with since the beginning, and one that would shape the program's next phase. The solution emerged from an unexpected source. A group of program graduates, both police officers and community members, approached Anthony with a proposal. They wanted to create a mentor training program, where successful participants from established locations could help launch new ones. "Think of it like a family tree," explained Officer Chen, who had been there the night of the original traffic stop. "Each new location learns from the experience of the others, but develops its own unique character based on local needs." The idea resonated with Anthony. He worked with this core group to develop a comprehensive training program that would preserve the essential elements of the original while allowing for local adaptation. They called it the Bridge Builders Academy. The Academy's first class included 20 pairs of mentors, each pair consisting of one police officer and one community member. These duos would travel to new locations, spending several weeks helping establish programs and train local leaders. One of the most successful implementations came in a small town in Texas that had been torn apart by a police-involved shooting. The mentors worked patiently with both sides, using the program's proven methods to create dialogue where there had been only anger and distrust. The transformation in this town caught the attention of state legislators. They began exploring ways to incorporate elements of the program into standard police training. Anthony was invited to testify before the state legislature, where he emphasized the importance of sustained, meaningful interaction between police and community members. "You can't legislate trust," he told the lawmakers. "But you can create environments where trust has a chance to grow. That's what our program does. It creates spaces where people can see past their fears and prejudices to recognize their common humanity." The program's success also attracted international attention. Police departments from Canada, the UK, and Australia sent representatives to observe and learn. Each country's unique challenges required thoughtful adaptation of the program's core principles. Back in Philadelphia, Anthony's original gym had become something of a pilgrimage site for those interested in police-community relations. Visitors were often surprised by what they found: not a slick, corporate-style training center, but a genuine community hub where officers and residents worked out together, shared meals, and built real relationships. The gym's walls told the story of the program's evolution through photos and news clippings. A framed picture of Anthony and Officer Thompson from the night of the traffic stop held a prominent place, a reminder of how a potentially tragic encounter had transformed into a catalyst for change. Officer Thompson, now a respected leader in the program, often shared his perspective with new participants. "I thought I was protecting my community," he would say, "but I was actually building walls between us. This program taught me that real security comes from connection, not confrontation." The program's impact began showing up in unexpected ways. Crime rates in participating neighborhoods showed significant decreases, not because of increased enforcement, but because of stronger community bonds. Police departments reported improved officer retention and job satisfaction. Young people who had once viewed police with fear or hostility were considering careers in law enforcement. Anthony's boxing career continued to provide a powerful platform for the program's message. Before his first title defense, he invited program participants from across the country to attend a special training camp. The event became a celebration of the program's success and a reminder of the power of bringing people together through sport. During one session, a young police officer and a teenager who had once been arrested by that same officer demonstrated boxing techniques together. Their easy rapport and genuine friendship exemplified everything the program stood for. "6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined this," the officer admitted. "Now I can't imagine policing any other way." 3 years after the traffic stop that started it all, Anthony stood in the White House Rose Garden, preparing to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The journey from that tense night to this moment reflected not just his personal transformation, but a broader change taking root across the country. The president's remarks highlighted how a potentially tragic encounter had instead sparked a movement of understanding and reconciliation. But for Anthony, the real achievement wasn't in the recognition, it was in the thousands of small victories happening daily in gyms and community centers across the nation. The program had now spread to over 100 cities, each location adding its own unique character while maintaining the core principles that made it successful. Research studies had documented significant improvements in police-community relations, with participating cities showing marked decreases in use of force incidents and civilian complaints. But beyond the statistics, the program's true impact could be seen in countless personal stories. Like the story of a young man who had joined the program filled with anger after losing his brother to police violence. Through the program, he not only found healing but eventually became a police officer himself, committed to being part of the change he wanted to see. Or the story of a veteran officer who had been on the verge of retirement, disillusioned with the job, but found renewed purpose through the program. She now led training sessions for new recruits, teaching them that true strength comes from building bridges, not walls. The program had evolved in ways Anthony never imagined. Police academies across the country had incorporated elements of the curriculum into their standard training. Community organizations used the program's methods to address other forms of social division. The model was being adapted for schools, prisons, and corporate diversity initiatives. During a national conference marking the program's 3rd anniversary, Anthony shared the stage with Officer Thompson. Their story had become a powerful symbol of transformation, but they were quick to emphasize that the real work happened in daily interactions, in the small moments of connection and understanding. What we've learned, Anthony told the audience, is that change doesn't come from grand gestures or dramatic showdowns. It comes from creating spaces where people can be vulnerable, where they can learn from each other, where they can see past their differences to recognize their shared humanity. The conference highlighted some unexpected outcomes of the program. Mental health professionals reported improved emotional well-being among participating officers. Schools near program locations saw reduced disciplinary issues and improved student-teacher relationships. Communities reported stronger bonds not just between police and residents, but among neighbors themselves. One particularly moving presentation came from Deshawn, the teenager who had shown Anthony the video of helping a stranded motorist years earlier. Now a college student studying criminal justice, he spoke about how the program had changed not just his view of police, but his entire life trajectory. This program taught me that real strength isn't about dominating others, Deshawn said, echoing words Anthony had spoken many times. It's about having the courage to reach across divides, to be vulnerable, to see the humanity in people we've been taught to fear or distrust. The program's success had also influenced policy changes. Several states had passed legislation supporting similar initiatives, recognizing that building trust between police and communities required more than just oversight and accountability, it required creating opportunities for genuine human connection. As Anthony prepared for his next title defense, he reflected on how his life had changed since that night 3 years ago. His boxing career had taken on new meaning. Each fight was now an opportunity to shine a spotlight on the program's message of transformation through understanding. The gym where it all started remained his spiritual home. Though newer locations had more modern equipment and facilities, there was something special about the place where the first walls had come down, where the first bridges had been built. Looking ahead, Anthony saw both challenges and opportunities. The program's rapid growth meant constant attention was needed to maintain its integrity and effectiveness. But the momentum of positive change was building, creating ripple effects that reached far beyond the original vision. One evening, after a training session, Anthony found himself alone in the gym. The familiar sounds and smells brought back memories of that first night, when a traffic stop could have ended in tragedy but instead became a catalyst for change. On the wall hung a new photo, him receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, surrounded by program participants from across the country. But his proudest achievement wasn't captured in any photo or award. It was in the countless stories of transformation, in the bonds formed between former adversaries, in the communities healing old wounds and building new connections. It was in the knowledge that when people are given the space to see each other's humanity, real change becomes possible. The work continues, Anthony often said, because true transformation isn't a destination, it's a journey we take together, one step at a time, one connection at a time, one story at a time.